Hello there, I hope you're doing okay, and welcome to my review of Death Stranding. Now this game has really polarised people. Some people absolutely adore this game and call it an absolute masterpiece, a stroke of genius by Kojima, a master craftsman of his trade, and I'm not going to disagree with those people. I had an amazing time with this game. For me, it was a game that really reawakened my love and passion for computer games. I always play games and I enjoy them, but a lot of the games we play are quite generic. Like, we like a certain type of game and we tend to buy that type of game time and time again, so we kind of create the problem ourselves. A lot of publishers play safe, especially in the AAA space, and just keep giving us stuff that I know we're going to buy, right? But occasionally something comes along that just makes you think, whoa, kind of wakes you up and you kind of think, whoa, this is why I loved games. This is what got me into games in the first place. That sense of wonder, of being transported to another place, another fantastical world, and being completely engrossed in it. And that's what Death Stranding did for me. It took me back to that place where I was completely absorbed in a game, and it's been a while since that's really happened. So, my hat goes off to Kojima. He's pulled it out the bag. He has just knocked it out of the park. He's done a brilliant job. But saying that, I don't consider myself to be a complete Kojima fanboy. I do see that this game is not going to appeal to everybody. And that's fine. Not every work of art, and I do consider games to be works of art, is going to appeal to everyone. Mona Lisa is a masterpiece, it's a priceless painting, and when I went to see it in the Louvre, I was blown away by it. But there's people next to me what's all the fuss about? It's just a painting of some Italian woman. What's the big deal? It doesn't mean that their opinion is any less worthy than yours. It's just, they have different sensibilities, they have different expectations, they have different values, and that makes the world a richer place to live in. Okay, so the question is, are you going to enjoy this game? Is it going to appeal to you? That's why you're here, right? That's the question you want answered. Is it going to be worth your time and your money? Are you going to connect with this game? Is it going to provoke an emotional response within you? Are you going to have fun, right? And of course, fun is a subjective thing. I think with a lot of games, what we think of as fun is really how the game connects with us. What sort of emotional journey we go on and how we relate to it. If we relate to it in a positive way. And that isn't an easy question to answer, especially with a game like this, a game that is pushing the boundaries, that is a bit different. If you want something different, this is definitely the game for you. It's different. Okay, so what I would say, and this might sound a bit left field, but if you enjoy hiking, if you enjoy putting on a pair of hiking boots and leaving all the stress of modern day life behind, going out into the wilderness, exploring, if you like going to places like, if you live in the UK, be the Lake District or the Pennines, and just being out in nature and rambling around, maybe along a riverbank where there might be some slippery rocks, so you've got to be careful where you tread. You might have a rucksack on with your lunch and other possessions, so you're being careful you don't slip and fall in. If that is something you enjoy, that sense of isolation, enjoying the views, then I think this game is going to be for you. But if you're the sort of person that, I'd rather be at home playing Call of Duty and shooting people, then yeah, this game is definitely not for you. Now, all great games have certain moments in them where it all just clicks. It all comes together and you have a transformative experience. Now, you are the main protagonist. Their trials, their tribulations, their struggles are your struggles. And that happened in this game for me. There were moments when I would walk up a cliff and I would look across the landscape and I would see these beautiful mountains in the background, see these inverted rainbows in the sky, which we'll get to a bit later on. But I would just be transformed I would be Sam Porter Bridges. I would be there in that moment. And there's some fantastic music in this game. And so a track by Low Roar or Silent Poets would start playing, and it would just perfectly fit with the mood of the game. And I would just have a big smile on my face, and I was like, yes, yes, this is it. This is what this game is all about. Now, I wanted to take a moment to talk about the team involved in making this game. Now, Kojima isn't just a visionary, he isn't just a craftsman who can put together a fantastic game. He's also a leader. Like, if you read about the people that work with him and what they have to say, it's obvious that Kojima can get people on board with his vision. He can sell the dream. Like, he can get people that are working for him invested in what he's trying to make and get the best out of people. And you can see that on every level in this game, from the game mechanics to the designs to the visuals to the audio. Everything is top notch. It's triple A stuff, and you can't fault the game for how it looks or sounds. Okay, you may not be cool with the slower pace of the gameplay, but undeniably it is an absolutely stunning game to look at. And from an industrial design point of view, the different machines, the vehicles, the gadgets you use, they're all beautifully designed. And I have actually bought the art book for this game because I love the art direction so much, and I will be looking through that book at some point. I'll do a video on that for sure. Now, I could talk about Death Stranding all day long, but to keep this video to a reasonable length, I'm going to now attempt to give a brief synopsis of Death Stranding. Now, you're a porter, you move things around from place to place. Yes, you are a delivery man in this game. Your name is Sam, and you work for a company called Bridges. Now, as you're making your deliveries, you will come across ghostly apparitions floating around in packs. Now, these are BTs, and they will hunt you down, and if they capture you, you'll be whisked off to a boss fight. Now, if you die in the boss fight, there will be a massive explosion or a void out, and you will be taken to the underworld. Now, normally at this stage, you would be trapped there and become a BT yourself. But you're a special kind of porter. You're not your ordinary delivery man. You can actually come back from the dead. Yes, you can resurrect or be repatriated into the living. Now, to achieve this, your spirit must relocate your body. Once you've done that, then one of the strangest cutscenes of all time will then play, and you will reappear in the game world. And all your packages that you were carrying will be scattered around. You can pick them up again and continue on your delivery. Okay, if that all sounds a bit weird, that's because it is a bit weird. But to understand it, you really need to look at the backdrop to all this. The cataclysmic event. Now, in most games, that would normally mean some post-apocalyptic world where there's been a nuclear war, or there's a virus that has mutated humanity into some kind of zombies. But of course, that's all been done a million times before. Now, refreshingly, Kojima has avoided those cliches and come up with his own unique way to create chaos. He has turned to the world of theoretical physics. Now, you may have heard of multiverse theory. This is a theory where anything that can happen will happen. There's an infinite number of universes branching off from our own. Now, imagine if one of those universes was perhaps inverted to ours, and maybe time run quicker in that universe, and for some reason that universe has collided with ours in some way. It's interacting with ours and distorted the space-time fabric of our own universe and led to all these weird phenomena that Kojima is exploring in this game. Now, Kojima isn't just content with exploring multiverse theory. I mean, why stop there, right? Matter and antimatter explosions, i.e. the void outs. Time dilation. Now rain in this game accelerates time. It's called timefall. And anything it touches will age rapidly. You even see the grass at your feet withering and dying before your eyes. Quantum entanglement facilitates the instantaneous transmission of data across time and space, i.e. the chiral network. References to the Big Bang. The main protagonist in the game is even named after the God particle, the Higgs boson. Now, if you're the sort of person that likes everything to be explained to you at any given time, to know exactly what's going on, you're going to find this game incredibly frustrating. Kojima likes to keep his audience guessing. Even during the lead up to the launch of the game, Kojima was feeding people little snippets of information, and it created wild speculation. I even participated myself and made a few videos on what I thought Death Stranding was going to be about, and I really enjoyed making those videos. Kojima understands to explain everything is to actually lessen the experience. Great bits of art leave things open to interpretation. They ask something of the audience. Even the Mona Lisa that I mentioned earlier, nobody actually knows who she is. She could be the wife of a merchant, or she could actually be a feminized version of Leonardo. That's one theory, that he's actually painted himself as a woman. Okay, so now I'll quickly talk about dooms. Now, this is a condition. It's like an intolerance to BTs. You can actually see the main characters crying tears when BTs come near to them. Now, as this condition develops, you get more and more powers. Like, you become more and more strongly connected with the other side. Like, Sam can sense BTs. Another character, Fragile, she can actually see them. Higgs has got to a point where he can actually teleport and call timefall out of the sky, which makes him quite a formidable opponent. Okay, so now I'm going to address the elephant in the room. Why has Sam got a baby in a little glass pod attached to him? That's right, you're not just a porter, you're like a surrogate dad, and you have to not only negotiate these environments, but you have to do so with a little baby strapped to you. And of course, if you fall over or if you get attacked, it starts crying and you have to pacify it, which sometimes can be quite inconvenient, if you've been hunted by BTs. I don't know how Kojima even thinks of this stuff. Okay, so what's the point of this little baby? Or bridge baby as they're called, or BB for short. Well, this little baby forms a connection with the other side. Like, when you plug into it, it strengthens your connection, and so you can actually see the BTs and negotiate them without getting, hopefully, captured. Now, where the babies actually come from is a bit grim, so I won't really go into that, but they are real babies, and the baby is actually incorporated into the story as well. And I think it's quite iconic. Like, when you see pictures of the game and you see the baby on Sam, and of course if you've seen the first trailer where Sam is on the beach and he picks up the little baby and he's crying and he hugs it to his chest, that's quite emotive, and it symbolises probably the strongest bond of all, and that's between a parent and child. There is a lot of symbolism in this game. Now, when the baby cries, the noise comes out of the controller, the speaker on the controller. And when this first happened, my cat Patch happened to be sitting in my lap, and he jumped up in the air and he ran off. And he looked back at me like, "What was that?" I was like, "It's okay, Patch. It's not a real baby, and he's okay with it now." Such a nice little touch. Like, Kojima really doesn't miss a trick. Now, being a repatriate, i.e. being able to come back from the dead, is just the tip of the iceberg. BTs are actually allergic to Sam's biology. Like, you can actually use Sam's bodily excretions, and I mean all his bodily excretions, to battle the BTs, or make weapons that you can use to battle the BTs. And that includes your urine, your poop, even your blood. So yeah, you will actually be throwing poop grenades at the BTs, a lot of them. Now, just in case you're wondering, BT stands for breached things. or beached things, which is basically the same thing. It's referring to being stranded in this other world. And that's what happens when you die. You become stranded in this upside down, topsy-turvy world that's all watery. It's actually referred to as the beach. Okay, so now for the story. What about the characters? What about the narrative? Is it compelling? Now, if you've played any of Kojima's other games, particularly Metal Gear Solid games, you'll know that the plots can get a bit confusing. And the characters can be a bit weird and out there, but still entertaining. And that applies to this game as well. There are lots of cutscenes. They are beautifully done. And the main missions, if you like, or the main deliveries, actually push forward the story. Now, some people might find the story too far out there, too weird. It's not going to be to everybody's tastes. It is typical Kojima. He keeps you guessing all the way to the end with complex plots and characters. It is difficult to know what's going on at any given time. You know, that's part of the mystery of it. Me, I was fascinated the whole way through. I think it's incredibly imaginative. I wouldn't say you should play this just for the story. I mean, like, if the characters are really interesting to you, then yeah, maybe. But really, it is a combination of the story and the gameplay coming together and making a fantastic experience. There is a sort of revelation at the end, and you think, oh, yeah, you know, that does happen. And I did get emotionally engaged with the story. There were a couple of times where I actually felt emotional. So for me, that's a win. Obviously, I'm not going to spoil the story for you, but the basis of it is that you have to reconnect America. America's society has become fragmented, and there's little pockets of humanity, and you have to reconnect them. Now, you have a thing called a Cupid, which is like a little bunch of memory keys with these equations on them. They're kind of like decryption keys that allow the different communities to connect to the network, or the chiral network. And once you've connected a little outpost to the network, that's when you can then utilize what other people have left behind, other players in that environment. So you go from the East Coast to the West Coast, gradually connecting people. Some people don't want to be connected for various reasons, and you have to kind of convince them to do so. Now, why America now looks like Iceland, I can't tell you. That's a bit of artistic license on Kojima's part. The big thing at the moment in computer games is 3D scanners. Actually being able to scan 3D environments and put them into your game. There's lots of resources online, high definition scans of rocks and cliff faces and whole environments. And so, as a developer, you want to utilize that technology. And the first time I saw this sort of landscape technology was actually in Star Wars Battlefront. But it's being used widespread now. And Kojima has picked an environment that is perfectly suited to really showing what this 3D scanning technology can do with these really rocky landscapes of all these different rock formations. It's a great fit for the technology. Now, if you've seen the recent demo for the Unreal Engine 5, you'll know what I'm talking about. They really use rock formations a lot in that as well, because again, it shows how good the 3D scanning technology works. So Kojima is definitely not averse to a bit of artistic license. If it looks cool, he's going to put it in his game. And the inverted rainbows that I mentioned earlier fits in with the idea that the timefall or the rain is not of this world. It's from this other world that's upside down, inverted to ours. And it's the atmospheric lensing effect of that world. It's what causes the rainbows to appear inverted to us. It's such a visually striking thing to see. It's something that's familiar, but presented to us in such an unfamiliar way. Now, does all this make perfect sense? No. It's science fiction. It is fantasy. And as such, of course, you can write it off and say it's all a lot of nonsense. but personally I find it quite staggering and quite inspired how creative Kojima has got with all this stuff. And like all great fantasy, it is based in reality. Now, I mentioned earlier about a lack of creativity in the AAA game space, and there is truth to that. A lot of games, especially open world games, do follow a similar template. They have extensive skill trees and crafting and lots of fetch quests. And to be fair, there are a few fetch quests in this game. But on the whole, Kojima avoids all that and comes up with a game that's refreshingly different. You do have to put the effort in, but it will reward that effort. At times, this game will delight and excite you. Now, you will hear the word chiral in this game a lot. Now, chirality is actually a thing. It's the property of an object where it cannot be superimposed upon the mirror image of itself on any axis. The human hand has this property. And when you develop dooms, you also develop an intolerance to human contact. So you can't even shake hands, which after all is a basic form of human contact. And Kojima has taken it one step further and created his own exotic element. It's a gold-like substance that he's called chiralium. This kind of explains why there are golden hands dotted around the environment. And you can pick up this exotic element, and you can also collect ceramics and metals from packages that other people have lost and left lying around. And you can use these materials to actually build structures and reinforce them. Now, other people can actually do the same thing. So you can actually work together to build structures and make use of those structures throughout environments that you've connected to the network. And this forms a big part of the game. Later on, you can even make highways across the environment. So at one point, you might be travelling through an environment, really struggling over really sort of rocky terrain. And then later on in the game, you might be just flying through that section on a motorway, on a motorbike. And this really speeds up your deliveries and really accelerates your progress throughout the game. Now, this game is using cutting edge technologies. Kojima roamed around different studios looking at what people were using, and he really is making the most of the technology available to him. The likenesses and the character animations in this game are absolutely superb. Kojima has used 3D scanning technology, mocap and photogrammetry really well. I mean, he's used this stuff before. He did use this kind of technology in Metal Gear Solid 5, but in Death Stranding, he's really taken it to the next level. I mean, just watching one of the characters here, Fragile, as she eats one of these little, actually they're quite cute little bugs, but she's eating one of these crypto bites, I think they're called, and they actually give you sort of immunity to the timefall. You even have a little jar of these little bugs in your safe house to eat at your leisure. Okay, so now I'm going to stop talking and just check out how good the sound is in this game. Notice those characters are actually floating upwards. It's weird. That's me collecting a few resources. Chiralium. And the red markers on the rocks, that's just telling me the terrain is really difficult. but obviously I can see that. It's just me doing my scan. They're everywhere. Okay. It's great stuff. It's really atmospheric. Now, you may have heard people mocking this game, saying it's a walking climbing simulator, and normally that would be a negative thing, because in most games, moving forward and walking around is just simply pushing the stick forward on your controller. And occasionally you getting from A to B, you might have to fight a few enemies, and that's pretty much it. But in this game, at any moment, you can slip, you can fall, you can stumble, you can lose your balance, your packages can fall everywhere and get damaged, you could be crossing a river and lose your footing and end up being washed down the river, floating along with all your packages going everywhere. So the actual environment itself becomes a key part of the gameplay, and that's quite revolutionary. So to call this game a walking climbing simulator, that's not a bad thing, as long as it's a good walking climbing simulator, and this definitely is. Now, when it comes to shoot 'em ups, I do much prefer first person. I think it just works much better when you're aiming and shooting. But for a game like this, that's about navigating environments and it has melee combat in it, I just feel that third person works better. So I definitely think that it was the right choice for this game. Now, whenever you hit someone during melee combat or you shoot somebody, you get this slow-mo effect, and it does look very cool. It looks very cinematic, but it does slow the action down. I'm not sure I'd want it in every game. This isn't Doom, this isn't Apex Legends, this isn't Destiny. It's not about the combat, so it does actually kind of work. Now, I love games that strive for immersion. And one of the things I really love about this game is that you can actually pick up packages. You can physically manipulate them. You can actually pick them up with your left and right trigger. You can actually transfer them to a carrier, or from a carrier onto the back of a truck you might come across. That's actually really difficult to program, and not many games even attempt to do that kind of thing. During melee combat, you can even pick up packages and throw them at the enemies, or physically actually hit them with a package. Just make sure it's not something that's mission critical. What makes this game feel so unique is the physicality of it. Physically interacting with the environments, negotiating the environments, and when you pick things up, packages, whether it be weapons, whether it be gadgets, they physically appear about your person. They don't just disappear into some invisible backpack, and this really adds to the immersion. But Kojima's taken it one step further. All these things actually affect your movement through the environment. When you're carrying things, if you haven't loaded them on yourself correctly, if you're unbalanced, it will affect how you move through the environments. There is an auto stack feature that allows you to more evenly distribute the weight, and I used it all the time. Now, most games are built around combat, around conflict. This game is not one of those games. This game, according to Kojima, is about bringing people together, stressing the importance of human connections and strengthening those connections. And that's reflected in the contrast between having to negotiate these environments by yourself and having to renegotiate them, but this time with the help of others. And what a big difference that makes. Being able to make use of certain things that other players have left behind. You don't meet other players, you don't actually see them, but you can make use of what they leave in the environment, and you can actually leave things for other people to use as well. And this is a big part of the underlying message of this game. I was talking earlier about art and it connecting with you. That's what Kojima's doing with this game. He's making a piece of art that literally is about connections, not just connections between you and the game, but with other players. And we've seen this sort of thing before. If you've ever played Dark Souls, you will see messages left on the floor, players will warn you about things. But this is taking it to a whole nother level. Like, you can come across bridges that people have built. There could be a ravine, and someone's built a bridge that you can make use of, and you can show your appreciation, give them some likes, and it creates a completely different feeling from being completely isolated to actually feeling connected, and it adds a whole nother layer to this game, and it elevates it to another level. Yes, you have boss fights and they get increasingly imaginative as the game goes on. I won't spoil those for you. Yes, there are enemies in the environment. These rogue sort of delivery men. Well, they're not really delivery men. They just want to steal your packages. They're obsessed with packages and they just hoard them at their camps, and sometimes you might have to go and retrieve them. But that isn't really what this game's about. It's not about conflict. Even when you do have to tackle them, you can immobilize them. You don't actually have to shoot them. Shooting people just doesn't fit with this game. It's not what it's about. And that's kind of hard for people to understand. And that's really, I think, why people had such a hard time getting their head around what this game is all about. They saw the demos, they watched the trailers, and they just saw a character walking through an environment. And they're like, okay, yeah, but what about the shooting? No, what about the combat? Surely that's the big part of the game. He's not showing us the combat. But that isn't what this game is about. And once you realise that, once you accept that, then you can like move forward and just enjoy this beautifully crafted game that Kojima has conjured up for us. Okay, so now I want to talk about the cool things that can happen in this open world. Now, this electric spear comes flying in from the side, immobilises my electric motorbike. So that's out of action now, so I've got to wait for that to get back online before I can use it. In the meantime, the humans are trying to track me down and nick my packages, the mules. So I'm going to use the radial selection wheel, the UI, to select the bowler gun, which is my favourite weapon, and you'll see why in a minute. Now, the mules aren't too smart. Like, the AI in this game isn't too smart. They just come running at you one after the other. Now, the bowler gun fires a strand with two weights on it, and it kind of wraps, you can see that it's wrapping itself around the enemies and immobilising them. It's around his neck, that one. and you can take out a whole camp with a bowler gun. They will just come at you one after the other. You have plenty of ammunition. It's not particularly challenging. And that is, I think, one of the weaknesses in the game. I'll talk about that a bit later. Okay, so now I'm making my way back. This is a bridge that someone else has built that I can use, and thank you very much. I could stop and give it a like, but let's get back to and deliver my packages. Oh, the mountains look amazing, don't they? It's so beautiful. But cool little things like that just happen in this game. So here I'm on my motorbike and I think I'm going to jump this ravine, and I kind of pick a bad spot. And I'm like, oh, am I going to fall off? No, I'm okay. But then I'm trying to get off the bike. I managed to get off the bike, but then I fall over and all my packages fall everywhere, so they're going to be damaged, which obviously isn't great. The baby's crying. I was like, oh no. So now I'm like stressed out now. How am I going to get out of this situation? Now, luckily, I have a ladder. This is like one of the few times it's imperative that you have a ladder with you, so I can get out of this. Now, I could drop down, I think, but I'm not sure. I might die. It might be too high. So, okay, yeah, I'm going to use the radial selection, get my ladder. I mean, the UI works actually really well. Okay, so now it's going red, so I can't place it. No, it's gone blue. Now I can place my ladder there. And I should have placed it more at an angle. And also, I should have climbed to the very top of the ladder. I make the mistake of trying to jump off the ladder, like halfway up. I think I should have gone to the top, and I ended up falling down. And my packages are damaged again. The baby's crying. So yeah, it's quite stressful. And, is this fun? I mean, yes. I mean, for me it is. I mean, I like these little moments. This is one of the things that makes this game so much fun to play. It's true, I suppose, of any open world. But oh gosh, the baby is crying. so you have to rock it. I like the lullaby music playing. And you can see the little scanner thing is actually like a mobile for the baby. I love little touches like that. So nice. And you can see that as the baby calms down, there's a little meter on the side there indicating if it's okay. Now, this was a bit of a bad decision. I needed to get across here because I'm carrying a lot of weight in the back of this truck. And yeah, I'm kind of stuck now. And I'm running out of electricity for the truck. It's electric, and you can see that yellow bar bottom left there. I'm using up a lot of power trying to get out. Come on, please. And I think, am I going to make it? Am I going to make it? No. And literally you can see there the bridge is based there I was trying to get to. So close. So now I've got to get off and actually carry all the packages. So that's a pain. So that's when I definitely did need a recharge station. But I found that most of the time the vehicles, the range on them was fine for most trips. Like, you don't necessarily have to have a recharge station. And also, you don't have to do all the deliveries. Like, some you can just give to a delivery bot to do for you if they're not that important. So that's really welcomed. Okay, now I really love this game and I hope everyone plays it, but I don't want to be accused of giving an unbalanced review. The main problem with this game, in my opinion, is that the difficulty is too low. It really is aimed at the more casual gamer. I never felt like all the fancy gadgets were particularly necessary. I could always do the deliveries without worrying about have I got enough ladders or have I got enough ropes. Some of the deliveries do have a time limit, but that's very generous. And I think this is because, like lots of other developers in the AAA space, Kojima is concerned that if he makes the game too challenging, people are going to stop playing, and then they're not going to get the full experience of the game, which obviously him and his team have put an incredible amount of time and effort into. And Kojima is very story focused, he's very story driven. I think he's a bit of a frustrated filmmaker, and you can tell that he comes up with these ideas that could actually be a screenplay for a film, and then he builds a game around it. So actually making the game tricky or difficult at any point, he's resistant to it. Like, he wants people to experience the whole story from start to end. That's his main focus. And I think that's why games like Bloodborne and Dark Souls are so rare, because there aren't many companies that are prepared to actually make a game that costs millions of pounds to make actually challenging to play. So I do suggest playing this game on hard mode, but you can change the difficulty at any time. Now, another thing I didn't quite like was later on in the game, more traditional weapons are introduced. Shotguns and assault rifles, hand grenades. But as soon as I started using them, it kind of lessened the experience. It made me feel like I was just playing your typical first-person shooters. I mean, the gun mechanics aren't bad as such. It's just not what I wanted from this game. It kind of diluted the experience for me. Now, this game is such a monumental achievement that I do feel a bit petty nitpicking, but you know, if you twist my arm, some of the NPC characters in the outposts suck up to you quite a lot right at the start of the game. It's not as if you've killed any bosses at that stage. I mean, why do game developers feel they must constantly massage the ego of the player? I'm not going to want to play your game more just because you're telling me how great I am. I mean, for some people, maybe they need that in their lives, right? But me, I just find it cringeworthy. Okay, so what about replayability? Now, if this was simply a single-player, story-driven game, it would be very limited, obviously. But that is not the case, because it's an open-world structured game. You can take multiple different routes throughout the environments. There's loads of different modes of transportation available to you. There's loads of weapons, gadgets to use. You're not really going to utilise all of this stuff in your first playthrough. Also, the deliveries are rated, so you can improve your performance. A lot of the missions are timed, and you can actually adjust the timer to make it more difficult for yourself and improve your rating. And then of course you have the asynchronous nature of the gameplay, being able to interact with other people, building structures within the environments for yourself and other people to use. There's so many different ways to play this game. There's so many different ways to approach each delivery. You could easily spend hundreds of hours playing this game if you so desired. And I believe a lot of people probably will spend hundreds of hours. It's such a beautiful world, and you just want to hang out in it and just enjoy it. It's actually a shame you can't invite like a buddy into your world to actually play together. That would be really cool. Now, just like any good book or any good film, there's so much to this game. Like, it's so detailed, there's so much to take in and digest that you can't really fully appreciate it on your first playthrough. My first playthrough lasted 61 hours, and that was just playing the main missions that drive the story forward. I did only a couple of side missions. You can play this for a lot longer than that. You could play it for a bit less if you rush through it, but there's a solid 50 hours gameplay here, so that's great value for money. And even when the credits roll, you can continue to play. You can continue to do missions and build structures and explore. So yeah, you can play this game until your heart's content. And there are other collectibles to collect if you want to. If you want to be a completionist, there is, a platinum trophy, so you can do all that as well. Unlike a lot of AAA titles that take themselves way too seriously, Kojima's not afraid to have a bit of fun. Cameo appearances, people wearing silly hats and talking nonsense. Even the tall necks make an appearance from Horizon Zero Dawn, which is a touching way for Kojima to tip his hat to Guerrilla Games. After all, this game wouldn't be quite as spectacular as it is without Guerrilla's Decima engine. The first time I saw a tall neck in the game, I literally jumped out my seat. I thought it was an enemy. I thought it was going to attack me.
Yeah, soak it in.
And of course, if you come across a hot spring, why not take a dip and relax and rejuvenate yourself? I don't know how Kojima comes up with these things. It's just genius. But don't worry, if there isn't a hot spring around, you can just take a nap anywhere. Just lie down and hug your little BB unit and, yeah, have a little nap. And see that text coming up that's telling me that other players have used one of the roads I built? That's relaxing. Wakey wakey Sam. You can even hop on a cargo carrier and skate about, which took me back to my skateboarding days as a kid. Whee! It's all these little touches that help to make the game feel a little bit special. It's like the magic dust that Kojima sprinkles all over his productions. I love the fact that even after all these years of making such fantastic games, with all the adulation and all the criticism that Kojima has received over the years, his passion for computer games has not diminished. You might think that he'd be a bit jaded by now. And by leaving Konami, it's almost as if his full creative powers have been unleashed. I'm not knocking Konami. They made some amazing games over the years. I grew up playing their games and loving their games. Castlevania Symphony of the Night is one of my favourite games of all time. But I think Kojima definitely needed a new project to sink his teeth into. Now, with every console generation, there are standout games. Games that people just can't forget. They're like the classics for that system. And this, make no mistake, is one of those games. This is a standout game for for the PS4 this generation. It's not the first time Kojima's done this. The original Metal Gear Solid on the first PlayStation and PlayStation 1 is an absolute classic, and it's one of my favourite games on that system. I can't wait to see what Kojima does next. Okay, so I could literally talk about this game all day long. There's so much to it, there's so much I could talk about, but this review is already long enough. I don't want to take up any more of your time. I think I've got across the main points of this game, really hopefully giving you a bit of an idea what you're letting yourself in for. This is a game that doesn't come along too often. It's something that pushes the boundaries, something a bit different, something quite refreshingly different. I don't think it can really be overhyped, in my opinion. It really is a work of genius by a master craftsman. This is unmistakably a Kojima production through and through. I can't imagine anyone else even attempting a game as outlandish as this, let alone pulling it off. I know Kojima has his detractors, but I believe they are seriously underrating his achievements. I'm not saying it's a game for everyone, not by a long shot, but hopefully I've convinced you to give it a go, and I sincerely hope you do, and I truly believe this is not a game to be missed. Thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed this video and found it helpful, please give me a thumbs up, that would be much appreciated, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye for now.